The morning sun rose over the colony of New Haven on the planet called 4. The light touched the green fields and the small houses and the faces of the 3,000 humans who called this world their home. It was a peaceful place, a farming place, a place where families grew crops and raised children far from the troubles of the galaxy. Daniel Carter stood on his porch and watched the sun rise. He was 42 years old with tired eyes and strong hands. His skin was weathered from years of working under alien suns. He had been a military engineer once back on Earth, but that life was behind him now. He was a farmer, a father, nothing more. His son came out of the house behind him. The boy was 12 years old with brown hair that never stayed flat and a smile that could light up any room. He carried a school bag over his shoulder and a piece of toast in his hand. Dad said, "You are staring at the sky again." Daniel smiled and put his arm around his son. "Just enjoying the view," he said. "You better get moving or you will be late for school." Took a bite of his toast and started walking down the dirt path toward the colony center. He turned and waved. "See you tonight, Dad." Daniel waved back. He did not know that this would be the last normal morning of his life. The colony of New Haven had existed for 15 years. It sat on the edge of Galactic Council space, protected by treaties and agreements that the humans trusted completely. The Council was made up of dozens of alien species, and they had promised that all member worlds would be safe from attack. The humans believed this promise. They had no reason not to. Maria Santos was the colony administrator. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had helped build New Haven from nothing, and she loved it like it was her own child. That morning, she sat in her office, reviewing supply reports when her communication screen began to flash with an urgent signal. She pressed the button and the face of her assistant appeared. "Maria," he said, "we are detecting ship signatures at the edge of the system. A lot of them." Maria frowned. "Council ships?" she asked. Her assistant shook his head. "No, the signatures do not match any council vessels. They are something else." Within the hour, the colony knew the truth. The ships belonged to They were a reptilian species known throughout the galaxy for one thing: slavery. They raided weaker worlds and captured living beings to sell in their markets. They were supposed to stay far from council space. They were not supposed to be here. But they were here, and they were coming fast. Maria activated the colony emergency system. Sirens began to wail across New Haven. People stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. Children in the school pressed their faces against windows. Farmers dropped their tools and ran toward their families. Daniel heard the sirens from his field. His heart went cold. He dropped his equipment and started running toward the colony center, toward the school, toward. The fleet entered orbit and began firing. Great beams of energy struck the ground and buildings exploded into flame. The colony had only a few small defense guns, meant for wildlife and pirates, nothing that could stop The guns fired anyway. They did nothing. Landing ships descended from the sky like metal insects. They touched down in the streets and their doors opened and soldiers poured out. They were tall and covered in dark green scales. Their eyes were yellow and cold. They carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. They did not come to destroy, they came to collect. They moved through the streets and grabbed anyone they could find: men, women, children. It did not matter. All living beings had value in the slave markets. They shocked the ones who resisted and dragged the ones who could not run. Screams filled the air. Daniel pushed through the chaos. Smoke burned his eyes and the heat from the fires made his skin sting. He saw his neighbors being pulled toward the landing ships. He saw people he had known for years crying and begging. But he did not stop. He could not stop. He had to find. The school was burning when he arrived. Part of the roof had collapsed and flames licked at the walls. Daniel ran inside without thinking. The smoke was so thick he could barely see. He called his son's name over and over. He found several children hiding in a supply closet. They were terrified and crying. Was not with them. Daniel told them to stay hidden and kept searching. He found a teacher named Doctor near the back entrance. She was trying to lead a group of students to safety. Her face was covered in ash and her hands were shaking. Daniel said, "Where is?" His eyes filled with tears. "They took him," she said. They came through the back and they took him with a group of others. I tried to stop them. I am so sorry." Daniel felt something break inside his chest. It was not anger. It was something deeper, something that had no name. He grabbed by the shoulders. "Where did they take them?" he asked. Pointed toward the eastern edge of the colony. "The main landing zone," she said. "They are gathering everyone there." Daniel released her and started running again. He ran faster than he had ever run in his life. His lungs burned and his legs ached, but he did not slow down. His son was out there, his boy, the only thing in the universe that mattered. He reached a hill overlooking the landing zone and dropped to the ground. Below him, he saw dozens of soldiers and hundreds of human captives. The captives were being sorted into groups and loaded onto transport ships. Some were crying. Some were silent. Some were too young to understand what was happening. And there, near the center of the crowd, Daniel saw. His son was standing with a group of other children. His face was dirty and his clothes were torn. But he was alive. He was alive. Daniel watched as a soldier pushed toward a transport ramp. His son stumbled but did not fall. The boy looked around, searching the chaos for a familiar face, searching for his father. Daniel made a decision in that moment. It was not a complicated decision. It was the simplest thing he had ever done. He was going to save his son or he was going to die trying. There was no other option. He looked down at the landing zone and began to plan. Daniel lay flat on the hill and studied the landing zone below. His military training was coming back to him now. It had been buried under years of peaceful farming, but it had never truly disappeared. He counted the guards. He noted their positions. He watched their patrol patterns. He looked for weaknesses. They were confident. They moved slowly and carelessly. They laughed and talked among themselves while their captives waited in terror. They had done this many times before on many different worlds. They did not expect resistance. They did not think these soft humans would fight back. This was their first mistake. Daniel crawled backward off the hill and made his way to a damaged supply building nearby. Inside, he found tools and equipment scattered across the floor. He gathered what he needed: a heavy metal pipe, a cutting torch, some wire and fuel canisters. He was not armed with proper weapons, but he had been trained to make do with whatever was available. He worked quickly and quietly. Within 20 minutes he had created 3 simple explosive devices and a weapon that was part club and part blade. It was crude, but it would work. It had to work. The sun was beginning to set as Daniel approached the landing zone from the eastern side. The shadows were growing longer and the fires from the attack were dying down. Most of them were focused on loading their cargo. Only a few guards watched the perimeter. Daniel moved like a ghost through the ruins. He had forgotten how good he was at this, how natural it felt to hunt instead of being hunted. The first guard never saw him coming. Daniel struck from behind and the alien fell without a sound. He dragged the body into the shadows and kept moving. The second guard was harder. This one was more alert and turned at the last moment. Daniel hit him across the face with the pipe and then hit him again. The guard went down but made noise as he fell. Daniel froze and waited. No alarm came. He kept moving. He planted his explosive devices at 3 different points around the landing zone. Then he found a position behind a wrecked vehicle where he could see clearly. His son was still standing with the other children. An officer was walking among the captives and inspecting them like they were animals at a market. Daniel recognized the officer from the markings on his uniform. This was Sub-Commander, the one in charge of collecting slaves. He was larger than the other, and his scales were darker. He carried himself with the casual cruelty of someone who had never faced real consequences. Daniel triggered the first explosive. The blast tore through a fuel container near the northern edge of the landing zone. Fire erupted into the sky and soldiers scattered in confusion. Daniel triggered the second explosive before they could recover. Then the third. Chaos spread through the landing zone like a wave. Daniel charged. He came out of the shadows swinging his weapon and screaming. They were not prepared for this. They were not prepared for a single human attacking with such fury. Daniel cut through two soldiers before they could raise their weapons. He kept moving toward. The other captives began to run. Some of the children screamed. Some of the adults tried to fight back against their captors. The orderly operation was falling apart. Daniel reached and grabbed his son's hand. "Dad," cried, "you came for me." "I will always come for you," Daniel said, "always." They ran together toward the edge of the landing zone. For a moment, Daniel thought they might actually escape. For a moment, he felt hope rising in his chest. Then the energy blast hit him in the back. Daniel fell forward and let go of his hand. The pain was extraordinary. He could feel his body failing. He could feel the warmth leaving him. But he was not dead yet. He forced himself to turn over and face his attacker. Sub-Commander stood over him with a weapon pointed at his chest. Behind stood a dozen soldiers. They had recovered from the chaos, and now they had Daniel surrounded. Tried to run to his father, but two soldiers grabbed him and held him back. The boy struggled and kicked, but he could not break free. "Dad," he screamed. "Dad, get up." Looked down at Daniel with cold, yellow eyes. "You killed 6 of my soldiers," the alien said. "You destroyed valuable equipment. You caused me a great deal of trouble." Daniel coughed and tasted blood. "Worth it," he said. Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Your species is strange," he said. "You fight even when you cannot win. You sacrifice yourselves for your young. It is inefficient." Daniel looked past at his son, had stopped struggling. The boy was staring at his father with tears running down his face. Daniel tried to memorize that face. He wanted it to be the last thing he ever saw. Seemed to notice this. He looked back at and then at Daniel. He tilted his head like he was considering something. "I will make you an offer," said. "Your life for his freedom. You die here and the boy goes free. I will leave him on this world with the other survivors. He will not be taken to the markets." Daniel did not hesitate, not even for a second. "Done," he said. Seemed surprised by the speed of the answer. "You do not wish to negotiate?" he asked. "You do not wish to say goodbye?" "Let me say goodbye," Daniel said. "Then do what you want." Waved his hand and the soldiers released. The boy ran to his father and fell to his knees beside him. He grabbed Daniel's hand and held it tight. "Dad," said through his tears. "Dad, no, please no." Daniel reached up and touched his son's face. "Listen to me," he said. "I need you to be brave. I need you to live. I need you to grow up and be a good man. Can you do that for me?" Nodded, but he could not speak. "I love you," Daniel said. "I have loved you since the moment you were born. Being your father was the best thing I ever did. Never forget that." "I love you too," Dad whispered. Daniel smiled. It was a real smile, a peaceful smile. He was not afraid. He was exactly where he was supposed to be. None of them noticed the figure hiding in the ruins nearby. Prelate was a diplomat from the Galactic Council. They had been on 4 for a routine inspection when the attack began. Now they crouched in the shadows with their diplomatic recording equipment running. They captured everything, every word, every moment. Pulled away from Daniel and pushed the boy toward a group of survivors at the edge of the landing zone. Then he turned back to Daniel and raised his weapon. Daniel looked up at the alien sky one last time. He thought about his wife who had died years ago. He thought about the life he had lived. He thought about growing up without him. He closed his eyes. The weapon fired, screamed, and somewhere in the ruins, Prelate saved the recording and began planning how to share it with the galaxy. The recording reached Earth 3 days after the attack on 4. Prelate had traveled without stopping. They had pushed their small diplomatic vessel to its limits, burning through fuel reserves and ignoring every protocol about rest and maintenance. They carried something important, something that the humans needed to see, something that would change everything. The prelate landed at the United Human World's capital in New Geneva. They requested an immediate meeting with President Henry Cole. When asked why, they said only 4 words: "You need to see this." President Cole was a tall man with white hair and tired eyes. He had led humanity through difficult times before. He had faced economic crises and political conflicts and threats from hostile alien species. He thought he had seen everything. He was wrong. He sat in his private office and watched the recording on a large screen. His advisors stood behind him in silence. No one moved. No one spoke. They just watched. The recording showed Daniel Carter lying wounded on the ground. It showed Sub-Commander standing over him with a weapon. It showed the offer being made: a life for a life, a father for a son. It showed Daniel saying yes without hesitation. It showed running to his father. It showed them holding hands. It showed Daniel touching his son's face and telling him to be brave. It showed him saying, "I love you." It showed the weapon firing. It showed screaming. When the recording ended, President Cole sat very still. His hands were pressed flat against his desk. His jaw was tight. His eyes were wet, but no tears fell. "Sir," one of his advisors said quietly, "what do you want us to do?" Cole did not answer right away. He was thinking about Daniel Carter. He was thinking about what kind of man trades his life for his child without a moment of doubt. He was thinking about thee and their cold, yellow eyes and their slave markets. He was thinking about how this could never happen again. "Release the recording," Cole said finally. "Every channel, every network, every world. I want every human being alive to see what happened on 4. Within hours, the recording spread across human space like fire through dry grass. It played on screens in homes and offices and schools. It played in bars and hospitals and military bases. It played on colony worlds and space stations and ships traveling between the stars. Billions of humans watched a father die for his son. And something changed inside them. Admiral Grace Mitchell was the commander of Earth's Third Fleet. She was 56 years old with short gray hair and a reputation for being calm under pressure. She had fought in 3 wars and won all of them. She was not easily moved. But when she watched the recording, her hands began to shake. She was in her office aboard the flagship Resolution when her communication screen activated. President Cole's face appeared. "Admiral," he said, "I assume you have seen the recording." "Yes, sir," Mitchell said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were hard. "I am giving you command of the response," Cole said. "Every available ship, every Marine, everything we have." Mitchell nodded. "What are my orders, sir?" Cole leaned forward. "Bring our people home," he said, "every single one of them, and make sure they understand what they have done." The mobilization began within the hour. Ships that had been scattered across human space began moving toward rally points. Soldiers who had been on leave returned to their posts. Factories that had been building civilian goods switched to military production. Across hundreds of worlds, human civilians volunteered for service. The recruitment offices could not process them fast enough. Young people and old people, men and women, teachers and farmers and engineers and artists, they all came forward. They all wanted to help. On the colony world of New Dallas, a retired soldier named Frank watched the recording with his wife. When it ended, he stood up and walked to his closet. He pulled out his old uniform and began putting it on. "Frank," his wife said, "you are 63 years old." Looked at her. "That could have been our grandson," he said. "That could have been any of our." His wife was silent for a moment, then she nodded. "Go," she said, "do what you have to do." This scene repeated itself millions of times across human space. People who had never thought about war suddenly found themselves ready to fight. The memory of Daniel Carter and his son burned in their minds like a flame that would not go out. Ambassador addressed the Galactic Council on the fourth day after the attack. She was a small woman with red hair and a soft voice, but there was nothing soft about her words. The violated Council space, she said. They attacked a protected world. They killed innocent people. They took slaves. The Council chamber was full of alien species. Some looked worried. Some looked confused. Some looked at the humans with new and uncertain eyes. "What do you want?" the Council speaker asked. Straightened her back. "We want nothing from the Council," she said. "We are not asking for help. We are not asking for permission. We are simply informing you of what is about to happen." She paused and looked around the chamber. "Humanity is going to war," she said. "They will return every human captive they have taken. They will face justice for what they have done. And if anyone tries to stop us, they will learn what happens when you hurt our children." The chamber fell silent. The alien ambassadors looked at each other. They had always thought of humans as a young species, a weak species, a species that needed the Council's protection. They were beginning to understand how wrong they had been. Admiral Mitchell stood on the bridge of the Resolution and watched the fleet assemble. Over 800 warships had gathered at the rally point. Battleships and carriers and cruisers and destroyers, the largest human fleet ever assembled. On the screen in front of her, she could see the faces of every ship captain in the fleet. They were waiting for her to speak. Mitchell thought about Daniel Carter. She thought about his son. She thought about all the other parents who might one day face the same choice. "You have all seen the recording," she said. "You all know why we are here. We are not fighting for territory. We are not fighting for resources. We are fighting for something much simpler." She paused. "We are fighting because one of our fathers gave his life for his child, and we will not let that sacrifice mean nothing. We are going to bring our people home. We are going to show the galaxy what happens when you take our children. We are going to roar so loud that no one will ever forget it." The fleet began to move. The stars seemed to tremble. The human fleet entered space on the 14th day after the attack on 4. 812 warships moved through the darkness between stars. They traveled in perfect formation. Their weapons were charged. Their crews were ready. They did not come to negotiate. Commander received the reports from his border stations with growing concern. He was the same commander who had ordered the attack on 4. He had expected the humans to complain to the Galactic Council. He had expected diplomatic protests and economic sanctions. He had not expected this. "How many ships?" he asked his aide. "Over 800, the aide replied. "They destroyed our border defenses in less than 2 hours. They are not slowing down." Felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had raided human colonies 3 times before. The humans had always responded with words, with treaties, with negotiations. They had never responded with force. "Contact the High Matriarch," said. "Tell her we need the home fleet." The home fleet was impressive by any standard. 200 warships defended their home system. They had never been defeated. They had never even been seriously challenged. They believed their fleet was invincible. They were about to learn otherwise. Admiral Mitchell stood on the bridge of the Resolution as her fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the home system. On her tactical display, she could see the enemy fleet forming a defensive line near the 4th planet. Captain Ben Torres commanded the lead assault carrier Thunder. His voice came through the communication system calm and steady. "Admiral, they are broadcasting a message. They are ordering us to withdraw." Mitchell allowed herself a small smile. "Open a channel," she said. "Let me respond." The communication officers worked quickly. Within seconds, Mitchell's face appeared on screens across the fleet and their home world. "This is Admiral Grace Mitchell of the United Human Worlds," she said. "You have something that belongs to us. Return every human captive you have taken, all of them, unharmed. Do this now and we will show mercy. Refuse and we will show none." She paused and let her words sink in. "You have 1 hour," she said, "then we come for them ourselves." They did not believe her. High Matriarch watched the human fleet from her palace on the fourth planet and felt nothing but contempt. These soft creatures thought they could threaten thee in their own system. They thought their numbers would frighten her people into submission. "Destroy them," she ordered. The fleet advanced. Lieutenant Amy was a fighter pilot aboard the Thunder. She was 28 years old and had never seen real combat before. As she climbed into her fighter, she thought about Daniel Carter. She had watched the recording of his death more times than she could count. She had memorized his final words to his son. Her squadron leader's voice came through her helmet. "All fighters prepare for launch. Remember what we are fighting for." Activated her engines. "I remember," she said. The battle began at 1700 hours Galactic Standard Time. It lasted 6 hours. It was not a battle, it was a slaughter. They had technology and experience. They had fought dozens of wars against dozens of species. They knew how to win. But they had never fought humans who were truly angry. Human fighters swarmed from the carriers in waves so thick they blocked out the stars. Human battleships advanced without hesitation, absorbing damage that should have stopped them. Human crews fought with a fury that they could not understand. Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his fleet being torn apart. Ship after ship exploded into fire and metal. Communication channels filled with screams and dying signals. The defensive line collapsed within the first hour. "Retreat ordered. All ships retreat to the second defensive position." But there was no second defensive position. The humans were everywhere. They cut through the formation like a blade through water. They did not stop. They did not slow down. They just kept coming. Captain Torres led the assault carrier group into the heart of the fleet. His ships took heavy damage, but they kept fighting. "We have a breach in Section 7, his damage control officer reported. "Fires on decks 4 through 6. Torres did not flinch. "Seal the sections," he said. "Maintain attack speed." His crew did not question him. They knew what was at stake. They had all seen the recording. Lieutenant flew through a field of debris that had once been a cruiser. Her fighter's shields were failing and her ammunition was running low. But she kept flying. She kept shooting. She thought about Daniel Carter holding his son's hand. She thought about him saying, "I love you." She fired her last missiles at a destroyer and watched it break apart. Commander's flagship was surrounded. Human ships closed in from every direction. His weapons were depleted. His engines were damaged. His crew was dying. "The humans are hailing us," his communication officer said. Straightened his uniform. "One last act of pride. Open the channel," he said. Admiral Mitchell's face appeared on his screen. Her expression was cold. "Surrender," she said. "Order your remaining ships to stand down. This is your only chance." Thought about all the slaves he had taken over the years, all the families he had destroyed, all the lives he had ended. He had never felt regret before. He did not feel it now. "The do not surrender," he said. Mitchell nodded slowly. "Then you die," she said. The channel closed. Seconds later, a wave of missiles struck his flagship. The ship exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from the planet below. The home fleet ceased to exist at 2300 hours. 200 warships reduced to floating debris in 6 hours. The humans had lost only 43 vessels. High Matriarch watched from her palace as the human fleet took position above her world. Her military advisors were silent. Her guards stood frozen. No one knew what to do. "The human admiral is hailing us," an aide said quietly. Rose from her throne and walked to the communication screen. She had ruled for 30 years. She had never bowed to anyone. But as Admiral Mitchell's face appeared before her, she understood that everything had changed. "Your fleet is gone," Mitchell said. "Your defenses are gone. You have nothing left." "Said nothing. You took our people," Mitchell continued. "You killed a father in front of his son. You thought we were weak. You thought we would do nothing." She leaned forward. "You were wrong," she said. "Now you will give us back every human captive on every world. You will provide us with the location of every slave market where humans have been sold. You will do this now, or we will burn your civilization to ash and find them ourselves." Looked at the woman on the screen. She saw no mercy there, no room for negotiation, only cold determination. For the first time in her life, the High Matriarch felt fear. "I surrender," she said. Human Marines landed on worlds within the hour. They moved through slave camps and holding facilities and market pens. They found humans who had been taken years ago, humans who had given up hope, humans who wept when they saw the soldiers coming for them. Every single captive was recovered. Every single one was brought home. And across the galaxy, other species watched and understood that the universe had changed. The humans were not weak. They had simply been patient. They had been waiting. And now they were awake. 1 year had passed since Daniel Carter died on 4. The colony of New Haven had been rebuilt. New buildings stood where the old ones had burned. New crops grew in the fields. New families had arrived to help the survivors heal. A permanent defense fleet orbited the planet now. 12 warships that would never leave. No one would ever attack this world again. In the center of the colony, where the landing zone had once been, a memorial had been built. It was a simple thing, a bronze statue of a man kneeling and embracing a young boy. The man's face was peaceful. The boy's face was pressed against his father's chest. They held each other like nothing else in the universe mattered. Below the statue, carved into stone, were 3 words: "Love protects always." The dedication ceremony drew thousands of people. They came from across human space to stand in the square and honor a man most of them had never met. Politicians and soldiers and farmers and teachers, young and old, rich and poor, they all came. Dozens of alien ambassadors came too. They stood at the edges of the crowd and watched with careful eyes. They wanted to understand what this moment meant to humanity. They wanted to understand what kind of species builds monuments to individual fathers. Carter stood at the front of the crowd. He was 13 years old now. His hair was still brown and messy. His eyes were still bright. But there was something different about him, something older, something that had been shaped by loss and grief and time. Maria Santos stood beside him. She had become his guardian after the attack. She had held him while he cried and fed him when he forgot to eat and helped him learn to smile again. She loved him like he was her own son. She knew she could never replace Daniel. She did not try. President Henry Cole walked to the podium that had been set up near the statue. The crowd fell silent. Every eye turned toward him. 1 year ago, Cole began, a father named Daniel Carter faced an impossible choice. His son had been taken. He was wounded. He was alone. He was surrounded by enemies, and he was offered a trade, his life for his son's freedom. Cole paused and looked at the statue. He did not hesitate, Cole continued. He did not negotiate. He did not beg. He simply said yes. And then he held his son one last time and told him to be brave, told him to live, told him that being his father was the best thing he ever did. The crowd was absolutely still. Many people were crying quietly. Daniel Carter was not a soldier that day, Cole said. He was not a hero seeking glory. He was just a dad who loved his kid more than anything else in existence. And when the moment came, that love was stronger than his fear of death. Cole looked out at the crowd. The galaxy learned something about humanity that day, he said. They learned that we are not soft. They learned that we are not weak. They learned that when you threaten our children, we will come for you with everything we have. We will cross the stars. We will burn your fleets. We will kill your We will tear down your walls, and we will bring our people home." He straightened his back. "But that is not what I want you to remember," he said. "I do not want you to remember the war. I do not want you to remember the victory. I want you to remember a father holding his son. I want you to remember 3 words spoken in the face of death. I love you." Cole stepped back from the podium. Prelate approached next. The diplomat moved slowly on their 6 legs. Their compound eyes reflected the light of the setting sun. They had been the one who recorded Daniel's final moments. They had carried that recording across the stars. They had started everything. "I have lived for 200 years," said in their clicking voice. "I have seen many species. I have witnessed many conflicts. I thought I understood the universe." They turned to look at the statue. "I did not understand humans," they continued. "My people do not form bonds like yours. We do not sacrifice ourselves for our young. We do not love the way you love. When I watched Daniel Carter die, I felt something I had never felt before. I felt moved." The alien diplomat faced the crowd again. "Your species is young," said. "You have been among the stars for only a few centuries. Many of the older species looked down on you. We thought you were primitive. We thought you were weak. We were fools." Their voice grew stronger. "You are not weak," they said. "You are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Not because of your weapons, not because of your ships, because you love each other. Because you will die for each other without a second thought. Because a single father's sacrifice can unite your entire civilization into an unstoppable force." Bowed their head. "I was wrong about humans," they said. "I will not make that mistake again." The crowd remained silent as stepped away. Then Carter walked to the podium. He was small compared to the adults who had spoken before him. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the edges of the wooden stand. But his voice was clear when he spoke. "My dad was not perfect," said. "He burned breakfast sometimes. He forgot to wash his work clothes. He told bad jokes that only he laughed at." A few people in the crowd smiled through their tears. "But he was the best dad in the world," continued. "He taught me how to ride a bike. He helped me with my homework even when he did not understand it. He stayed up with me when I had nightmares. He made me feel safe." Looked at the statue of his father. "People keep calling him a hero," said. "They say he saved me. They say he showed humanity what courage means. Maybe that is true, but that is not what I remember." His voice wavered slightly. "I remember him teaching me to fish," said. "I remember him reading me stories at night. I remember the way he laughed when I said something funny. I remember him holding my hand when I was scared." A tear rolled down his cheek. "He was just my dad," said. "He loved me, and I loved him. That is all that matters." He wiped his eyes. "My dad told me to be brave," said. "He told me to live. He told me to be a good man. I am going to try. I am going to try every day for the rest of my life, because that is what he would want. That is how I can make his sacrifice mean something." Stepped back from the podium. Admiral Grace Mitchell walked forward. She was in full dress uniform with medals on her chest and stars on her shoulders. She stopped in front of and knelt down so they were at the same height. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a set of metal identification tags. They were scratched and worn. They had been recovered from the battlefield on 1 year ago. "These belong to your father," Mitchell said quietly. "He earned them during his service on Earth. He kept them all these years. Now they belong to you." Took the tags in his hands. They were warm from Mitchell's pocket. He held them tight and felt the metal press into his skin. "Thank you," he whispered. Mitchell stood and saluted him, not as a child, as the son of a hero. The sun was setting now. Orange and gold light spread across the sky and touched the bronze statue. Daniel Carter's metal face seemed to glow. He looked peaceful. He looked like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Walked to the statue and placed his hand on the bronze arm. He stood there for a long time while the crowd watched in silence. He thought about his father. He thought about the last time they had spoken. He thought about the words that would stay with him forever. "I love you too," Dad said softly. "I will make you proud." The sun dipped below the horizon. The stars began to appear one by one. Somewhere out there, across the vast darkness of space, the galaxy was watching. They were watching a boy say goodbye to his father. They were watching humanity honor one of its own. And they understood at last what it meant to be human. It meant loving so deeply that death itself could not stop you. It meant protecting the ones who needed you no matter the cost. It meant standing together when the universe tried to tear you apart. It meant being a father. It meant being a son. It meant being human. And humanity would never let the galaxy forget it.